Christian W. Diezel is a son of New England. He's a student of storytelling of the late folk singer and novelist Bill Morrissey. In between cultivating his freelance journalism and video production career, he is the founding alchemist, chief screenwriter, producer, and developer of 10th Mountain Studios, a documentary film and e-publishing startup. When not working on script, film, freelance, or publishing projects, Diezel can be found skiing the hardtack slopes of New England's backcountry, exploring a parcel of farmland with his bird dog, ranging a twisting piece of single track on his mountain bike, honing his Brazilian jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai practice in the gym, forging the surf, or entering the mouth of some great river with a fly rod. Some friends often describe Christian as unusually talented and eccentrically driven. Others often decline to comment on his work, which he simply takes as a sign of progress. Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Christian W. Diezel.
Hi guys. Before I give this presentation, I just need to make a couple disclaimers. This is for academic presentation purposes. These images and some of this content exclusively for display for tonight and to express vision and where I'm going with my career. Today I'm going to be expressing a process, and by doing it, hopefully telling a story. This is Bill Morrissey, my first true writing mentor. Bill had 11 albums, 2 Grammy nominations, and wrote 2 novels throughout the course of his lifetime. I'm working towards a documentary on his life and what's shaping up to be a book eventually, which is part of this whole e-publishing thing. And as the people unfamiliar with Bill are going to get to know him right now. In '85, Bill was on the stage of a Newport Folk Festival, which pretty much steeled him onto audiences. Some of the folks that people might recognize here, Ramblin' Jack Elliott, Bill in the shades on the left, Arlo Guthrie in the middle with the beret, Judy Collins with the hands sticking up, Mima Farina, and now some more backstage photos, Dave Van Ronk, Joan Baez, and who do you got on the center? Arlo Guthrie. When I discovered this event, I was like, all right, pretty culturally significant. And of course, when you're doing any sort of biographical work, whether it's documentary style, journalistically, you do back work, which arrives here. This is a letter to my father, who is in the audience as we speak, from September of 1973. And the real point to hone in is about the middle. Von Schmidt met me a couple months ago and played some songs. He shows some potential. So what we see here is an expression of an oral history, and I followed that up by asking my father, what's the deal with Von Schmidt? So, Eric Von Schmidt, author of Baby Let Me Follow You Down, which was actually originally, it came from, excuse me, Bob Dylan would go on to cover this on Martin Scorsese's The Last Waltz, and this was, he adapted his arrangement from the Reverend Gary Davis. Here we have Dylan on stage performing Baby, Let Me Follow You Down. And we start to see lineage, and the point is these are guys that Bill was interfacing with as a young man, with the exception of Dylan. He was hanging out with Von Schmidt. And so throughout this process, what I'm expressing here is how I'm doing this research and cultivating things. I went on to talk to Bill's first wife, Lisa Glines, also in the audience tonight. What I found was that in '74, they were seeing Springsteen in Cambridge, and before Springsteen was Springsteen. So what I started to pick up on was these incredible names and people before they were people. So I go on, and the people that we know. Thanks for the encouragement, guys. So I go on and I get in touch with another lady he would go on to date in later years, Anne Jocelyn Williams, a very accomplished novelist. Her father was Thomas Williams. People tend not to remember this guy, but what they do remember is one of his early students, John Irving. Okay? So this is a long conversation, but what I identified is what's commonly known as a talent hub. In the late 70s, they were getting together in this cabin in upstate New Hampshire, and that's basically where Bill's kind of talent for storytelling came from, which in some ways I feel is what he really passed on to me, because of course I'm not a musician. And in '96, Bill would go on to write his own novel, Edson. So again, what you're seeing here is some of the research that's come out of the last 3 years or so since he passed away. He passed away on the same day Amy Winehouse died. So some great stuff. In '98, he was featured in a documentary film, Hellhounds on My Trail, which was put on by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you're going to see a short clip of it here in a second. So I started moving towards, I wanted, because he's a musician, maybe the best way to represent him is through a documentary, which I'm now calling Rounder Than You, the birth and boom of the singer-songwriter generation, Bill Morrissey.
San Antone. A young man in a hotel room stares down a microphone. When he sings each song once, then sings it once again.
So, short clip of Bill. All right. So I go on to do market research, and throughout this process, a lot of this process, if you look at my title, right, is doing things remotely, because I do not have finance yet. But I started tracking other similar documentaries. He was mentioned in this one for the love of the music, the Club 47 Folk Revival. They had wanted to interview him, but of course he wasn't around anymore. In trends right now, I'm getting a little backed up, so I got to jump ahead now. Amanda Pearl Palmer, one of the big things that I'm moving towards is accessing crowdfunding, which is becoming more and more of a legitimate process for artists and filmmakers, for anybody trying to raise capital for what they're doing. Maybe capital is the wrong word, just to make things happen, okay? So moving back towards the history, this is Bill about circa 81, 82 with Elijah Wald and Dave Van Ronk. They had started a Reckless Records label. I started, again, cultivating the story. This is all story stuff. And there's a lot of story here, and we're going to move on to the next piece in a second. Bill with Elijah Wald. For folks that wouldn't know or might not know, Elijah Wald's a Grammy award-winning roots music performer and journalist, author. Author of the image you're about to see, or not the image, but the book, The Mayor of McDougal Street, which is a book recounting 1960s Greenwich Village and this, not just the political times, the musical times, the arts climate when before Bob Dylan was a person, right? And this is adapted, this has been adapted by the Coen brothers, and it's their new production, Inside Llewyn Davis. What I picked up with my history, this is the Van Ronk album that was a partial inspiration for the film, or maybe another way of saying that is, you're going to see it in a second, and hopefully you'll see the connection. Bill's story, it's a character-driven method to me, and I'm happy to be corrected by the professionals and just the community out there that can help guide this process. It represents what comes next after 1970, after the wake of what's known as the Great Folk Scare. And I'm trying to cultivate that knowledge, and I'm doing it remotely by doing interviews and accessing things until I can kind of get more support for what I'm doing. And the next piece is a thing I put together for tonight, which is just to express a vision of what I'm trying to do with the eventual documentary.
A lot of rock bands, because this is, of course, before this big folk boom hit.
This doesn't sound the same without Mike Turk on a harker.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chris.